we could celebrate the night. Hush, my babies, don't you cry. Don't look like me, but I'm here inside. Sit and burn the candle on both ends every night. Falling down and getting up, learning a new life. Life of a survivor, facing new desires. Won't sit down, gotta ignite us. Holding on, yes, I've had enough, but I'm not giving up. On my darkest days, the love will hold me up. I will survive, and I choose hope. I've come this far, I wanna see what's next. I'm not letting go. If I don't wake up tomorrow, I got no regrets, so I choose hope. Count the blessings till my very last breath.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reignite Your Purpose Conversations with Munira. I am Munira Premji, and I am so thrilled that you're here and have joined for the first of a 6-part series. In this series, we will cover and discover a number of topics designed to help you improve your personal effectiveness. Topics like how perceptions shape our lives, building resilience, managing emotions, and living in balance and living in gratitude. These sessions will be offered every Thursday from November 5th to December 10th, and we ask that you register for the sessions by going on iacanada.org/events. We promise you great content, fabulous guest speakers, proven models, and best practice information. And we ask that you bring your curiosity and your engagement as we learn together. Reigniting your purpose takes work. It's hard work, but we know that you are worth it. So be ready to roll up your sleeves and join us as we get on this journey with you. And one more thing, if you haven't already downloaded the handouts that you would have received when you registered for today's session, please do that now, because you will need those as we work through the activities with you together. And now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you the guest speaker for today's session, and that is Leila Rahemtulla. Leila Rahemtulla is an educator and management consultant for 25 years. She has many different roles and wears many, many different hats. She is an instructor at Simon Fraser University and BCIT, where she teaches organizational behavior, leadership, and instructor development. She's also a consultant and works with public and private sector organizations to help them develop competence in leadership and soft skills. Leila is an author of Reignite the Passion in Your Work and Your Life. She is an advocate for people with intellectual disabilities. She volunteers as a curriculum designer and facilitator for programs delivered to the Smiley community in Canada and the US. And in 2018, my friend Leila was honored with the YWCA's Woman of Distinction Award in the area of education, training, and development for her contributions to education and volunteer work within the community. Leila and I have collaborated on many, many different projects, and I have seen firsthand her incredible talent in the area of leadership and organizational development. I have been witness to her wisdom, to her passion, to her joy, to her sense of humor. And I am just so excited that all of you will have a chance to experience Leila and get to see her incredible wit, competence, and wisdom. So welcome, Leila.
Thank you so much, Munira. What a great, so generous introduction. I feel a little pressure But I'm thrilled to be here. It's such an honor to join you on this journey and all of you on this journey. When I first learned about you doing this project, I thought, this is so you. You are such a giving person, and to be part of this as your guest is just such an incredible experience. So I'm really excited about our sessions together.
Thanks, Leila. I can't wait to have a conversation with you, rich, robust conversation with you. So today we are going to delve into the topic of self-awareness. So let me ask you this. If I were to ask you all, how self-aware are you? If you're like most people, chances are you'd say, I'm pretty self-aware. But according to research, we are not as self-aware as we think we are. So today we will talk about self-awareness, why it matters, and how to build it. But let's take it right from the beginning. What is self-awareness? And each one of you may have a different definition for self-awareness. When I think of self-awareness, I think of the ability to see ourselves completely and clearly, to see our strengths, our weaknesses, our gifts, our warts, what triggers us, and what matters to us. It is understanding who we are, how others see us, and how we fit into the world. Self-awareness gives us power, good power to be the very best that we can be and to change what's not working for us. And why does this matter? It matters because people who are self-aware tend to be better communicators, have better relationships, and be more fulfilled in their lives. I want you to think for a moment of someone who is the most cluelessly not self-aware person that you know. And we all know those individuals. It could be a cousin, or it could be an uncle that you see at Thanksgiving, or it could be a colleague at work. It could be a spouse. If you were to ask them how self-aware they were, chances are they would say they're pretty self-aware. But what research bears out is that 95% of people think they're self-aware, but only 10 to 15% are actually self-aware. And being self-aware is probably the biggest gift that we can give ourselves, because the opposite of being self-aware is not being self-aware. It's being delusional. It's being oblivious of how people see you. And that's probably not the way that we want to, show up. So how do we make sure that we're not the annoying cousin or the, difficult uncle? And that's what we're going to be tackling today. And when we look at self-awareness, we will look at it from two lenses: internal self-awareness and external self-awareness. Dr. Tasha Eurich is a best-selling author in New York, best-selling author of a book called Insight. She's also an organizational psychologist and a researcher. And the way that she defines internal self-awareness is having an inward understanding of our values, passions, aspirations, how we fit with our environment, and our impact on others. And the way that she defines external self-awareness is an understanding of how other people see us. So today we will have a conversation about internal self-awareness and external self-awareness, and we will share some tools with you to help us develop both. Would you like to weigh in, Leila?
Yes, thanks. I'm so glad you shared that stat. Every time I hear it, it surprises me. It surprises me because we think, well, we can look in a mirror and see ourselves. But I think the work that you're really talking about is going deeper than that. And I think it's such a foundational piece for this kind of work, which I'm so glad you prefaced it with it's hard work. It's work that we have to be intentional about, and we have to be willing to take on. And so when we start to think about self-awareness, it's digging deep and maybe looking at our microscopic truth. And I'm so glad you talked about warts and all the other stuff, because we may uncover things that make us feel a little uncomfortable. And I think just learning to be with that and saying, okay, this is me in my imperfect perfection. And I love the fact that you're starting here, because I don't think we can know anything else until we know ourselves. So what a great first session to do, really starting to look at that and also look at how others see us. So it's talking about how we show up in the world as well. So great start.
Microscopic truth. Now that's a new one for me. and I love how you talked
So
about
deep.
it's imperfect perfection. I mean, that's exactly it. And you're so right. This is not a one and done kind of deal. This is about being works in progress and constantly looking at who we are and how we fit in and how others see us, and living from that place of values. And speaking of values, let's take a deeper dive. So there's many different ways that you can identify what your values are. And what we would like to do now is actually introduce you to a values assessment tool that will help us get there, to identify what are the things that really matter to us. And so here we go. I'd like to introduce you to a values assessment tool to get you start thinking about your values. To build self-awareness, we need to be so clear about what our values are, what we stand for, because our values represent what is important to us in life. They embody our unique individual essence and highlight what we need to live a happy and fulfilled life. There are so many different ways we can identify our values, and today I'd like to share one way through this values assessment tool. It looks something like this. There are about 100 value-related words in this document. Read the list and immediately cross out all the words that do not resonate for you, that have no meaning for you. Now, circle every value that you resonate with, values that you can relate to. And of the words you select, keep narrowing them down further and further until you get to your top 10 values that make sense for you personally. And now the really hard part. From your top 10 values, pick 5 that best represent your core values, what is most important to you. These are the values that speak to your heart, values that you need to create the life that you desire. And remember that there are no wrong or right answers. It really is what matters to you, and it's individual. And why is this important? This was not just an exercise of narrowing a long list down to a few words. It was about looking at the connection between living our values and living with a sense of fulfillment and what it is that we need to make that happen. Once you've identified your 5 core values, take some time to think about them. What values are you living? What values are you ignoring? How can you bring more of your core values into your life? How can you intentionally align your life so that you are living your values on purpose? Because the truth is, when we live true to our values, we live a life based on who we are at our very core, at our very essence. And that opens the door to helping us create a life of fulfillment and a life of meaning and a life of joy for us. Now, let's do this exercise together. All right, Leila. So let me ask you, where do you think our values come from?
That's such a good question. I think that when we start to look at values and where they're formed, we often look at our early experiences. And research tells us that many of our values are formed when we're quite young. And so as you were explaining values, I was starting to think about, when did I have clarity about those? I don't know. Maybe they were in there all the time, but have I always known them? I'm not sure. And so though they are formed with our early experiences, I think it's almost like a stone that, a semi-precious stone that hasn't been polished. It looks like a rock. And it's our experiences in life that start to rub and polish it. And so when we start to look at that, we start to maybe discover our values. So I'm so excited about this exercise. I think it's a really, really interesting way for us to kind of explore that and see what comes up for us.
Love that. So let's get into the exercise.
Okay.
So
I've got my form.
you have your...
I do.
So we're hoping that all of you on the call have the values exercise sheet.
Okay.
And what we're going to do now is we are actually going to start the activity. So the first thing that you want to do is, if you could go through all of the words, and we know that there's many words here, and immediately cross out any word that just does not resonate for you, words that you look at and say, no, I don't see myself in this word. There's no alignment. So start there. Let's start by crossing out as many words as you can from the list that you have in front of you.
Okay. That's a lot of words, Munira.
It is a lot of words. I hope each one of you are finding words that you're immediately able to cross out, because I can tell you words like accuracy just don't sit with me. Perfection, no.
I'm finding that while I'm crossing, there's others that I'm circling. So on the flip side of it, there's ones that completely are not me, but some that I think, oh yeah, that one is so important. So I'm already doing it different than what you explained to do. But I'm guessing that that's where we need to get to, right?
Yeah, so clearly that's exactly where we need to get to. So the idea is to cross out anything that doesn't work for you and circle any words that completely resonate for you. Yeah, I'm doing it your way as well now, Leila.
Okay. I'm also noticing something. If I'm crossing something off, I'm crossing it off either because it doesn't resonate or it's captured by something I've circled. So I'm willing to negotiate some of these out.
Do you have an example that you can share with everybody?
Yeah. So there's number 59 is kindness and 61 was love. And so I felt like love was stronger than kindness, and love incorporates kindness. So I could live with that. I could live with, saying, no, I know that that's inside of there.
I'm doing exactly what you're doing as well. So for instance, I looked at number 27, community, and number 39, friendship, and number 74, relationships. And I was able to cross out friendship and community because I think that comes in relationships. So I'm circling relationships. Okay, and so we would encourage all of you to be doing your own negotiation as you complete the activity.
So there's another thing that I find that I'm doing, and that is those big words, I'm actually starting to write on the side, because I'm sort of feeling like we're beginning to narrow these down, and I want to have those pulled out of here so that as I'm continuing on, that I look at those words and say, is there anything better that I'd be willing to swap out?
So your circled words are the ones that you are
Yes,
on the
yes.
side. Okay, got it.
Interesting. Neat. So where do we have to get to? 5 or 10?
Yeah, so ideally you want to get to your top 5, but you are very fast, Leila, because the idea was to go from 10 to 5, but yeah, eventually you want to try to get to 5. So let's give it another few minutes as we work through this activity with you. And if you have any questions about the activity, feel free to post them on the chat so that we can hopefully respond to those. Some of these are hard.
Mm-hmm. You know what's coming up for me is I'm asking the question, could I live without this? And that's making me really start to refine it, because there's ones where they're non-negotiable. And there are some that I'm feeling like, okay, yeah, it's nice. It's a nice to have, but is it really me?
Right.
So interesting. I haven't done this exercise before, and so I'm so glad to do this. I feel like this is an opportunity. We don't get to do this as facilitators very often, where we get to do the exercise with the group. So I'm so thankful that we get to do it too.
I haven't done this activity in a long time as well, so it's almost feeling very fresh for me, as I'm sure it is for all those who are participating in the exercise as well. I really liked what you said. So as you're looking at the circled words, the words that you're selecting, it's about saying, can I imagine my life without whatever that word is? And that is a really great way of making sure that those are core to you. Okay.
Interesting.
You know, I almost wonder, Leila, as we're working on this activity, because I have worked with you and know you so well, if I were to do this activity on you, not that I'm proposing doing that, but if I were to, you know, how accurate might I be in figuring out what your values are? Just a curious kind of question.
What would you guess?
Okay, you're putting me on the spot. I would have to say integrity would be a really big one for you. I would say joy. There's many, but those two I would immediately pick for you.
Top 10.
They are in your top 10?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That's amazing. Wow. Okay. So we know each other.
So I wonder, this may be a great activity for those who are listening in to do something similar with a friend and you know, guess each other's values. Might be a really great conversation.
Well, you know, as you were talking, Munira, what was coming up for me was I do this now at this point in my life, and this seemed like a fairly simple activity. But if I had done this in my 20s, I'm wondering if I would have chosen the same things. Because I think I was a different person then, and I would have been so caught up with what's the right answer here? Or
Mm.
what would Munira like me to say? What would impress her the most? And I didn't think about that now. I thought about really doing the activity by having that look. And I think maybe what's happened in the journey of life is that sometimes it's the ongoing look that lets us, almost like onion skin, peel away and have a look deeper and deeper. And maybe in my 20s, I don't think I was ready to really
Mm.
look that deep. So interesting kind of experience. Yeah.
Mm.
I was also reminded of where values come from with your earlier question. I was thinking about my grandmother and how we're shaped by the people around us. And so she raised me. My parents both worked when I was growing up, and she was notorious for feeding people when they came to our door, whether it was my friends coming to study or just anyone. Literally, she'd be inviting them in and offering them tea and giving them whatever food there was in the house. And I, once just flippantly said, "Grandma, you don't have to feed the world. You just."
Right.
And she sat me down right in that moment. She said, "Listen, I need to talk to you about something." And my grandmother came to Canada in the early 1900s. And after having 4 children, she was widowed. And she lived through the Depression as a widow, as an immigrant. And it was a very, very difficult time. And the community really bonded with one another because you had to rely on your friends and your neighbors. And she said, at that time, there were times where you didn't have food in the house. And when somebody showed up at your door with their children, there was an unspoken understanding that they may not have food in their house and they've come because they need to feed their children. And she says it was so important to preserve the dignity of those individuals and share what you had, because you don't know when that was going to be you the next day. And so I'm welling up in tears and I'm like, "Okay, Grandma, you just feed people." It's okay. But I realized that was her values. She was so young when she came to Canada. And this was clearly a pivotal experience that shaped her for the rest of her life. But it also shaped me. When she told me that story, I can't not know that story. I can't not understand what she went through. And even though I may not have experienced it directly, it shaped me. It shaped me. And so I'm just sort of thinking about this, and maybe I didn't know that or really appreciate it deeply when I was in my 20s. But I still go back to those stories, and I'm sure all of you have those moments where you had an experience or something impacted you. Munira, do you have moments that have come up for you or experiences that you feel shifted your values?
Yes, and before I go there, I just wanted to comment on what you said, because I'm thinking now, for those individuals who are doing this activity with us, who are parents of young children, imagine how you live and what they see you do may have such a very significant impact on them as it did for you, Leila, with your grandmother. And so it's just an interesting thought for me. I have to say that in my 20s, I probably didn't do a lot of this work either. It wasn't important to me. But I will tell you, a significant change for me was, as I'm working through this list, I'm looking at the words that mattered to me the most for most of my life, most of my adult working life. I would pick things like accomplishment, being the best, words about professionalism, recognition. Those would have been in my top 10, and I'm actually going through this moment right now where I'm thinking that for most of my life, my values were so defined by my work. So there is no right or wrong, but that's what it was. It was so defined by going up the career ladder, and those are the words. And now none of those words are making my top 10. And I think what shifted for me is, as you know, 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with one cancer and then a second advanced cancer, and then a few years later, a third cancer. And I think that that has shifted things for me so dramatically that now when I look at my circled list, words like self-care is coming up first. And self-care, I can tell you, Leila, would have been number 100 on my list before. I'm looking at this list, and health. Health is like in my top 5, because until I got ill, I really took my health for granted. It wasn't something I thought about. So it's interesting. For me, the shift has happened because of my experience over the last 8 years. Significant shift, like significant shift. All words are different, almost like a reverse. And I'm still kind of processing this as I'm speaking with you.
Yeah, that's
Raw.
Thank you for sharing that, and just being so vulnerable about that, because I think, there's this quote from Rumi that says, if you're irritated by every rub, how will you ever be polished? And I think about the difficult experiences in our life, and how I think they guide us to finding the real self. And so up until the point that you got sick, that wasn't an important thing for you. But when it was being taken away, suddenly you were like, this is my priority. This is who I am, and this is what I must stand for. And I think it's why you're a warrior. It's how you fought it. You knew that that's what you needed to do. And it was just so amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
And I'm hoping that every one of you who's participating in this activity is beginning to see the importance of discovering and exploring your values, because once you live those values, there's something about harmony that just comes up. There's something about life just makes sense. And I will tell you that anytime, I'm out of sync, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm not at my very best, I go back to those values, and immediately I see, you're not getting enough sleep, that self-care piece, or, perhaps you're not connecting with the community and friends as much as you need to, in order to feed your soul, which is the relationships word. And so I really hope that each one of you is taking away from this conversation that, your values may come from your family, your values may come from your experiences, your values may come from difficulties that you may have gone through. But at the end of the day, these are your values. There is no right or wrong. And your values don't need to be the same as somebody else's values, because this is what feeds your soul. Does that make sense, Leila?
It does. And as you were talking, I'm looking down at my 10 words that have to somehow become 5. And I'm starting to already see that these are comfortably me. These feel like a pair of shoes I've worn that, if I put my feet in there, it's gonna hug me. And so that's kind of
a great metaphor, by the way.
Maybe as folks are doing this exercise, have a look at the words that you chose, and maybe think about where they came from, but also think about your process. What came up for you as you went through this? Did you negotiate? Was it clear for you? Who were you doing this for? Were you doing it for yourself, or were you wondering, okay, if I have to share this, what's a good one for me to share? What do I need to show up as? And I think even that question allows you to take one of those onion skin layers off to say, okay, so if I was just doing this for me, just me, and being completely truthful and honest with myself, what's really important? If you were to take it away, what really matters? And I think you're right. I think the connection to true self and happiness and contentment is so, so important. And I don't think we see it when we don't have it. We see it when we start to get it, and we're like, oh, okay, this is why life is feeling a little easier now. Or this is why I feel like I can show up this way. And unapologetically, I can be a stand for these things that matter to me.
You just have a way with words. That was so beautifully stated. Any last things we want to talk about with values? Perhaps I can share that, wherever you have come to in your activity, perhaps like me, you're at your top 10 right now and have not been able to narrow it down to 5, and that's okay. So wherever you are in the process is perfect. This is hard work, and this will take time. But we're so thrilled that you've taken a start and a stab at this. And so wherever you are, is great. Hopefully you will have an opportunity after today's session to do more of that polish, to look at those words more, to take some time until you're able to come down to your 5 core. Okay, maybe 6 core. That's it. No more than that. Because you want to make sure that they're real, and part of that is being really critical about what words you choose.
Absolutely. Yeah, very nice.
Okay. Well, let's see. The next piece is to talk about self-awareness from a different lens. So what we've done so far is talk about self-awareness internal, i.e. our values, right? But now we want to shift and talk about self-awareness external, which is how we show up to others. And to do that, what I'd like to do is introduce you to a really phenomenal model called the Thehari Window. I know, Leila, it's one of your favorite models. So let's take a deeper dive, and then we will come back and do some work around the Thehari Window.
Great.
I want to introduce you to a model called the Thehari Window. This was created in 1955 by Joseph Luft and Harry Ingham, essentially Joe and Harry for Thehari. And this model helps us understand ourselves better and how we are perceived by others. The Thehari Window consists of 4 segments of human interaction: open, blind, hidden, and unknown. The first pane in the window is open self. This quadrant represents the actions, behaviors, and information that are known to us and to people around us. This includes anything about yourself that you are willing to share through communication and exchanges between you and others. It includes facts, skills, and attitudes, anything that is public knowledge. The second quadrant is referred to as blind self. Actions and behaviors in the blind area are known to others, but you are not aware of them. The information in the blind spot can be positive or negative and include hidden strengths or areas for improvement. The third pane is referred to as hidden self. This information is known to you, but not known to anyone else. It's information which you choose to keep hidden. This could be your feelings, ambitions, dreams, and opinions which you don't share with others out of fear or embarrassment or negative reaction. Once you trust others, you may choose to reveal some of this hidden information. The last window of information is unknown self. This includes skills, behaviors that you don't know about yourself and others don't know about you. It could be information like early childhood memories or undiscovered talents that may show up under unexpected circumstances. So, in summary, your open self is what you know about you and what others know about you. Your blind spot is what others know about you that you don't know about you. And we all have blind spots. Your hidden self is what you know about you that others don't know about you. And your unknown self is what you don't know about you and others don't know about you. Why is the Johari window important when it comes to self-awareness? It is important because when you open yourself to others and share information about yourself, your open and hidden self, you start to build connection and trust. And equally important, when you ask for feedback from others about your blind spots, you can increase your self-awareness, which is probably the biggest gift that you can give to yourself. A good start to using the Johari window is to make a list of your open self. What is it that you know about yourself and that others know about you? The next step, and this is a big one, is to ask a few trusted people in your life to give you feedback on your blind spots so that you can increase your self-awareness. And depending on your relationship and comfort, you may choose to share some of your hidden self with others or explore why you've chosen to keep things hidden. When you do this, the open self becomes much larger as you shrink the blind self and the hidden self. And this can build stronger trust and connection with others. The Johari window is a powerful, powerful tool in building self-awareness. When you are first using the tool, though, I would ask that you take it slowly. Think about only 1 or 2 people with whom you have a trusting relationship to get feedback on your blind spots and to share parts of your hidden self if you feel comfortable doing that. Because trust is important for this to work. Once you get more skilled at using this model, you will find that it will become a regular and big part of empowering you to be your very best self. So good luck with using the Johari window. All right, Leila. So what has been your experience using the Johari window? I know you teach this to your students as well.
So it shows up in a number of different self-development areas, and we sometimes use this model when we're developing teams. I love the context with which you've used it here, and that is really around the continuation of looking at self. And what came up for me was the compartmentalization of these different areas of how we show up, or what we don't know or what we know. And what it does is it allows us to then piece apart some of those ways that we're interacting with the world, and say, are there things that I don't know that perhaps I need to know? And are there some things that I've kept hidden? And do I maybe have to ask myself why? Why have I kept those hidden? So there's nothing wrong with having something in your hidden window, but then the connection of, is this giving me joy or not? And so maybe there's some really interesting ways to look at this, but the breaking it down, I think, helps people really sort of unpack it a little bit and understand sort of different aspects rather than saying, how do I show up in the world? Just as a general.
Right.
So yeah, that definitely resonated with me as I was listening to how you presented.
I have to tell you, when I first did the Johari window 25, 30 years ago, it was not a good experience for me. I went to an individual, a colleague of mine in Chicago, and she and I just never really saw things the same way. I think our values were very, very different. And we just did not seem to find any common ground. And I thought, I've learned about this Johari window. I am going to go to her and and get feedback. And so I went to her and I said, I know that our relationship is not the very best. I've learned about this tool, and I really want to get some feedback about my blind spots. And can I tell you, it was horrible. She used it as an opportunity to come up with like 10 things that I needed to fix and 10 things I was doing wrong, And I remember being devastated for like 2 weeks. And I thought, man, I don't know about this model. But, I gave it a try, and I went back. And that's why I think, one of the pieces of advice I give is you really need to go slow with this. So when you're asking for feedback, particularly about your blind spots, trust is really important. And so you want to really go to one or two people and say to them, and the questions that I will typically ask is, what is the one thing that I am doing that is really helping this team? And what is the one thing I could do to be better?
Right.
And it is really quite remarkable. But it's about going slow, and it's about trust.
I completely agree with you. And as you were sharing that example, I thought of the example that, sent me metaphorically under a table wanting to cry. And I was in a leader training session in San Diego, and part of the awareness work that they wanted to have for us was to develop us as facilitators. So we were to kindly and compassionately give one another feedback. So there was a good agenda. There was supposed trust in the room, and I came in, and I was quite early in my career, so I really thought I had it all going on, and I thought they won't have any constructive feedback because I'm that good. And I was just, my ego barely fit in that room, and this other facilitator gave me some feedback about my listening. And I heard it, and it literally felt like a stake was going through my heart, but I think it was a stake going through my ego. And, I really wanted to cry in that moment, because it was, I think, even though it was given with compassion and empathy, it was so jarringly not what I expected. And so for all of you, just know that even if somebody's giving you constructive feedback, you may react to it, and that's okay. I'm so grateful for that feedback, because it did make me better. It took me a while to hear it, and so I had to be with that, and it was uncomfortable. And I had to really be careful not to dismiss it, and just to take it in and say, okay, so do I value the person who gave me the feedback? Right. And I think that's the distinction between our two examples, is I really respected this fellow that was giving me the feedback. He was extraordinary, and I wanted to be like him. And I thought, he generously gave me something that will help me. But it was just really, really hard to hear. So when we're doing this tough work, this is the tough part. Right. This is the tough part. And so for all of you, when you're starting to think about maybe asking for that feedback, I love the guidance, Munira, that you have around asking for, what value do I bring? What are some of my strengths? And then if I could be better, if there's one way that I could improve, what would it be? Because it just really is delivered in a way that says, there's nothing wrong. Here's a better version of you, or here's a suggestion that you could take or not take. And then I think also with the hidden area, that's an interesting one as well. And I don't think there's a right or wrong way for people to be in terms of where they are. I think understanding what you've got in those boxes is good. But I was thinking about early in my career, I have two beautiful boys who are amazing young adults right now. But when my children were younger, I was very sensitive to the fact that talking about that in a job interview might make me look less capable. It was a story I wrote in my own head. And on top of that, one of my children has special needs. So I have a son with Down syndrome and autism. And I just was worried that an employer that I didn't know yet, that I hadn't built trust yet, might judge me and say, she'll always choose her kids first.
Right.
And so I didn't share that in interviews. And now, unapologetically, I am a stand for my family. And I know that whatever job I take, they have to understand that that's who I am. And I'm not afraid to do that. But I think there was a time where I kept it hidden because it was the right thing for me to do. I just felt like that was what I needed to do in that time. So as you think about your hidden area, also think about what is it that's hidden and why do I keep that hidden? And does that work for me?
Because it very well may work.
In that time, it was the right thing for me to do.
Right. You know,
it with my values though.
Right.
And so now what I find is that when I can be truthful and completely open and honest, I'm still mindful about, you know, the kind of information I share. I think there's a thing called too much information. You don't want to overshare. But at the same time, if I can help someone understand who I am, I think it does increase the changing the disconnect. You know, we don't necessarily feel like we're being two different people.
Right. There is alignment. Yeah. Which really does bring harmony, doesn't it? You know, your example, and thank you for sharing that. We need to do a whole topic on unconscious bias is what we need to do.
Yes.
Reminds me of, you know, I am supporting a lot of people who are going through cancer right now. And I find it really quite curious, you know, that so many of these individuals will not tell anybody that they have cancer. And so when I probe a little bit deeper, you know, they will say they don't tell others because of fear that they will now be treated differently, or because of guilt, or, you know, whatever that reason is, you know, whereas I chose to make that hidden part very, very public, you know, by writing a book and by, you know, doing blogs and stuff like that. And again, there is no right or wrong. It is, you know, who you are and what makes you comfortable and what serves you in the moment, you know. I wanted to say as well that now the Thehari Window has become so easy for me that it's a tool I use regularly. So when I'm working in organizational settings, so when I'm working with a team, you know, when I'm leading a project, you know, the Thehari Window has become a really easy thing, and I don't make it complicated. I literally meet with every member of my team, and I will ask the question. What am I doing right and that's serving the team? What could I be doing better? And when I leave it with that, what I have learned and what has been so gratifying to me is more times than not, the individual that I'm speaking with will ask me the same question. And so now what happens is you're really opening up the open pane of the Thehari Window. And imagine when you do that as a family or as a team, how much stronger the relationships are, you know? And so even at home, this is something I use pretty regularly, like on a monthly basis, you know, I will speak to my husband and I will say, you know, what am I doing that's really, you know, helping our relationship? And I will ask, what am I doing that's really annoying you? and usually there is, and usually and usually there is something, you know, and it's wonderful because what you do with the Thehari Window is, you know, again, using it with trust and integrity, is you really open the door, and it's just a wonderful place to be. Yeah, so I just like totally love this tool, but go slow. You know, when you're starting, so just perhaps pick a couple of people about your blind spots and do the work about understanding what you keep hidden, what is open for you, and and give it a whirl. Just give it a whirl.
When you were talking, the other thing that came up for me is the arrows move to the right to open up through feedback and disclosure. And so we get to that open area, which is what I think Joe and Harry wanted. They realized that there was some real benefit in opening that window. There's a model or a version of this model that then puts a diagonal towards the unknown window. And it says, when we have courageously and bravely accepted feedback and made it, known to us, and when we've disclosed in a way that is right for us, that diagonal opening is discovery. And I think that's what this session is about, is it's really allowing yourself the space, the safe space to discover yourself and to really know yourself.
And to get better as a result, like the feedback that I have received, particularly from a work context, throughout my career, are things that were such blind spots, totally unaware. And each piece of that feedback I took as gifts, and it got me to where I am today. So hard work, discovery, and worth it. So worth it.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, Leila. So what we've covered so far is we've talked about self-awareness, internal, i.e. values, and we've talked about self-awareness, external, which is really the Thehari window. And I think we're at that place in terms of conclusion where we can maybe offer you some strategies on how to move forward. And so, Leila, if I can trouble you to do the practice assignment, that would be really fabulous.
No trouble at all, because I'm an educator. I love giving homework. But in all seriousness, what you get out of these sessions will be the work that you put in. And so you've spent an hour with us. We're not asking you for another hour. We're just asking you for 45 minutes. We're going to call this activity our 315. And it's to spend 15 minutes with 3 people and do some things with them around this content. So what we'd like you to do is share a little bit of what came up for you with your values. Share your values with those 3 people. There'll be 3 people that that know you, that you have trust with, and that you want to be on your journey with you. And then I'd also suggest that you ask them courageously, what is one thing? What is one of my strengths? What is one thing that I could improve for myself? So use those 2 models as a way to spark a conversation. That's only a 15-minute conversation, but it's just really around deepening your understanding. As we've been looking at this and just preparing for the session, I'm so excited to do this because I don't do this often. And I realize that every time we do this, we're doing what Stephen Covey says, which is we need to always take time, stop our work, and sharpen the saw. So this is sharpening that saw of understanding ourselves. And so I think that if you take that on, you're really going to start to get the richness of these activities and really get to the place where this is your work now. We sort of gave you some tools to use, and I'm really excited to see what comes up for you.
Mm-hmm. So just want to say thank you to all of you for participating in today's session. We thank you, Leila. It is such a joy to work with you, and I could do this every day, all day. And we've started the session today, and it was about self-awareness because it is the foundational skill. It is when you know yourself that you can then get to know others and do other work. And we wanted to end with a couple of our favorite quotes on self-awareness. And Leila, I know you have a favorite one.
Yes, I do. So it's another Rumi quote. And it says, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself."
I love that quote. I love that quote. I'll share one. It's a much longer one. It's by Susan David, who is a writer. and she writes on the topic of emotions. And she says, once you've identified your values, you then have to take them out for a spin. This requires a certain amount of courage, but you can't aim to be fearless. Instead, you should aim to walk directly into your fears with your values as your guide toward what matters to you. Courage is not an absence of fear. Courage is fear walking.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And if any one of you have quotes on self-awareness that you'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you as well. We really hope that you found value in today's session. And we hope that you will stick around and join us through the entire series. It's a series of 6 sessions. And to register for the other sessions, all you need to do is go to iicanada.org/events. Next week, we will be discovering and exploring the fascinating world of perception. So thank you again for your engagement. Thank you for being on this journey with us. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to learn together. It has been our joy and our delight to bring this to you, and we will look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.
This goes so proudly, roadmap to my life. If I stand for something, maybe I can heal my tribe. Daring greatly to fuel this fire. Solid faith when reality lies. What happens in the darkness when fear and pain collide? Find the guiding light, stand for all who can't fight. Yes, we can break boundaries. No one won't stay silent, be the change I wanna see.